KFUG Community Radio, Crescent City, Del Norte, and beyond. Apologies to Billie Holiday. We had to jump out and get into the next segment here because I feel bad. I made Kyra and Ted wait while Mary and I went long. So sorry about that. Joined live in the studio, Ted Ward from the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority, and you did not come all by yourself today.
No, we've got Kyra Seymour, our Facilities and Programs Coordinator. She's been with the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority about a year now.
It's just about a year.
But she has a lot of good experience, and because she's new and is finding out, it seems like she's just the person to ask the questions, many of which we field on the phone.
Are you the sucker? Is that what he's saying?
Just a little bit. Everyone's got to, pay their dues.
I'm sorry, Ted. I interrupted.
No worries. So this program's Rethinking Recycling. We're doing this every second Friday of the month at 11 a.m. or thereabouts.
Or thereabouts. I got talking disasters with Mary today, and I'm so pleased. You mentioned coming up with a jingle for this. This is great.
Well, perhaps in future we'll have a reusable bit we can throw in.
It's great that it's Friday the 13th. It's a disaster.
And Kyra, are you going to be a part of this coming too?
I am.
I think you guys should just come up with a song and do it live every time.
Well, you haven't heard us singing that. We'd like to keep it that way.
Okay. Can you say tone deaf?
All right.
So today, what are we rethinking?
The format is always we're going to have a series of questions, some of which come through our people who call the office at 465-1100 and ask questions about what's recyclable and what's not. Some of which just seem sort of on topic. So today we're going to be talking a lot about plastics and various things, but also we wanted to wrap up a little bit our conversation we had last month, which is what's recyclable. So we want to emphasize that a little bit more. So let's dive in. What questions you got?
All right.
All righty.
I'll start. So I guess on the topic of what's recyclable, what should I never, and this seems like because there's so many answers to that question, but what should I never put in my recycling bins?
Well, the simple answer is you should never put trash in your recycling bin.
Okay, but that begs the definition of trash then.
And it also begs the definition of what's recyclable. And it also gets to a basic truth, which I know is hard news for a lot of people, but if you're not sure if something's recyclable,
just throw it in anyway.
Please throw it away.
Oh, okay.
Do not throw it in. Kyra has a nice phrase for that: wishful recycling, because people wish that they'd be recycled, and they wish that these things had an outlet, and they stop their part of it, which is their responsibility to try to find out.
It does seem like we have to bear in mind in Del Norte County, keep in mind a lot of restrictions that maybe larger communities don't have to worry about.
That's true, and we'll get into some of those. Okay. But the short answer is that if it's trash, it doesn't belong in there. The broad categories, right? Household hazardous waste. If something's got a skull and crossbones on it, it doesn't belong in the recycling. Also, things that are composite materials, such as, say, auto parts, right?
Okay.
It's got some metal in it, so, you might think, okay, that metal might be recyclable, and it's got this plastic bit. I don't know. I'll just throw it in the bin. Wrong. Do not do that.
You brought this up last time, and I was surprised. Like juice boxes, which is composite material, right? I mean, it's got different things
material.
in there.
That's right. Yeah. So ashes, appliances, electronics, hoses, plastic bits that you're not sure what kind of plastic it is, metal bits that you're not sure what kind of metal it is, none of that goes in the recycling.
Okay.
Clothing doesn't go in the recycling. So, and mixed metals don't go in the recycling. We do take, of course, aluminum cans and steel cans.
What are you talking about, mixed metals? Alloys?
I'm talking about metal window frames. I'm talking about
different things in it.
Belt buckles. I'm talking about little your old pile of nails. No, do not put those in. I will keep emphasizing this no part because we're talking about all of these things that we do not.
I want to come out and see your garage someday. I want to see with a pile of nails.
There is an accumulation. That's true. So liquids don't belong in there. Tools don't belong in there. Sharps, injectable medicines. PVC pipe doesn't belong in there. Pizza boxes that have any food contamination at all,
which is like every pizza
towels,
box. So
drinking straws.
We're getting ourselves into a rhetorical sort of I don't know, cluster here.
Yeah.
By trying to define the things that don't go into a recycling bin. How can I be certain that I am putting the correct item in a recycling bin?
An excellent question. There are three easy ways to answer that question. One is call Recology, 464-4181. You can check on the recycling bins. They will have labels. Now, unfortunately, because there have been some changes, if you look on the underside of your recycling cart at home, that label may be outdated at this point, but there's only been a few changes. We'll go over those. But those are easy ways. You can also check our website at recycledelnorte.ca.gov, and you can click on recycling, and you'll see that there's recycling flyers both with images and in English and Spanish. You can print out. Those are all good ways. You can also give us a call at 464-51100, and we'd be happy to answer your questions. So those are all your sources of information.
Okay.
And we really value the people who give us a call and try to recycle right, because it's so important.
Yeah, it's nice that they're making that effort. Why is it important to only put how onerous is it to the stream, to the people processing? When you're just throwing random stuff in there, how much of a hardship is it? And
it's huge. It is literally killing our recycling program.
Really? How?
It
How's
is.
that?
Well, the big problem I want to emphasize to everybody, the big problem is the people who are not trying, who are putting trash deliberately in the recycling bin, taking their household trash, and because it's free, they're dumping it in the recycling bin. That's a big problem. That's what we need to take on. That is our current challenge.
Okay.
That said, it's also in the larger context about what's happening with the recycling markets globally. And China used to be a very, very large buyer of recycled commodities coming from the United States and Europe. And they've recently implemented a number of controls, which they call a green fence or green sword. But essentially, they've really cut down on the levels of contamination, the amount of trash that they'll accept in the recycling. And so consequently, they used to be accepting a lot of materials with fairly high level of contamination. And that's when the infrastructure for sorting our recyclables was built.
Wow, okay.
And so we have all of these plants that take recyclables and try to sort them into different commodities, bail up those commodities, and ship them off. And having done that, they're in these sea containers. They go all the way across the ocean. They get to China. China opens them up, and they say, "This is garbage. We don't want it. Please take it back."
Oh, wow.
And so literally there are lots and lots of those shipping containers coming all the way back to the United States, going back through the same recycling plants, being processed again to try to remove the contaminants, and then being shipped back.
That's an incredible
So
waste of
there's
resources.
an incredible
Absolutely.
backlog of material that's waiting in China's ports. And there's also an incredible backlog in the use of those containers. So everything's kind of jammed up at this point. And the ultimate problem throughout is too much trash in the recycling. But for us, it's a particularly bad problem in that we're right now between 25 and 30% contamination in our community recycling bins,
which is too high, right?
In our curbs, and it's still too high. We need to get down below 10%.
Wow.
So we are going to be facing some changes to our recycling system because we are facing this challenge just like everybody else.
Now, it seems like there's kind of an ancillary sort of the opposite of a benefit.
Yes.
in that as we have to narrow what we can recycle, we're putting more things in the trash stream.
That's correct. But if we want to recycle anything,
Yeah.
it's got to make sense, right? It's not recycling at any cost and no matter what. It's recycling as part of the whole framework and part of the whole picture. And so the whole system needs to work. And right now we are having a big problem with our recycling stream.
And I think it's interesting, too, to sort of note that recycling is a world commodity, that you're taking part in the world economy when you recycle correctly or incorrectly, or you're hindering it. But I had never thought of it as being an international sort of thing. I just thought it was, some hippie in Humboldt is making necklaces out of it and, selling it again. But that's not what happens.
Exactly. And to directly answer your last question, why is it important to keep the non-recyclable items out of the recycling bin? Because you've got to pay someone at some point to pull that out and dispose of it. And that makes recycling everything else much more expensive and problematic and challenging.
Is the California recycling industry that you've sort of described, are they addressing the expectation changes from China? Are they addressing the changes in the
We are
market?
all trying to adapt as best we can. And without a doubt, the larger communities are facing the problem with greater urgency, and we're inevitably going to follow their lead. But it's something that is widespread. All of California is facing it. Oregon is actually landfilling a variety of the recyclable materials that they have collected and separated. That's something that thankfully we haven't had to do yet. But we certainly have a challenge that we will need to address.
Wow. All right. I'm sorry, I've been taking the questions. You go.
No problem. So I get this question a lot. I get people who want to know what they can recycle for money in this country. And part of this also, people are asking, why aren't recyclable items as valuable as they used to be?
Right. Okay, so one thing at a time. First of all, what can you recycle for money? The simple answer is CRV materials. That stands for California Redemption Value. And it's a deposit you pay whenever you buy a beverage in a beverage container. And it depends on the size of the container. But you can bring those to the buyback that Hambro Waste Solutions Group has opened up at the fairgrounds. And they'll give you your nickels and your dimes back for your bottles and cans.
That was a great service that they stepped in and sort of did that when Jalindra went away. I think that helped a lot of people.
So important. But you got to take off the lids and empty all the liquids. So there's no because they don't pay for those things. They only pay for the beverage container materials. So you got to clean them out. It's helpful if you can rinse them. If you can, because there is that sort of cream of soda soup that ends up oozing out of everything and giving it that special smell and
garbage
flavor.
Juice.
Yeah.
I don't want to know that much about your industry.
It's our business.
So I know. I think I asked you this the last time you were on, but the little ring that is left on top of a plastic bottle when you take the bottle,
stay on there.
That can stay on. Okay, thank you.
That's a good question.
That's the kind of, if I'm getting rid of the top,
Excellent.
how come I can leave that on there? But it's
It's
negligible.
small.
Okay.
It's small.
All right, and so where can people take their recyclables to get money for their CRV recycling?
That Hambro WSG has the buyback at the fairgrounds. That's the only one in the county so far.
And it's not open 24/7. It's like
That's
specific
correct.
days.
It's open
Wednesday
Wednesdays
through
through Saturdays,
Okay.
9 to 5.
Correct.
Oh, good. Okay. Oh, wow. All right. Good. That's good to know.
And they have moved, are moving.
They are in the process of moving, but they're not leaving the fairgrounds. They're just moving from the south end to the north end. There'll be huge signs, one of
Okay.
those wavy
So
people.
they'll be up by the where the midway is when the fair comes to town. up on that
Essentially, when you get to
Right
that
be-
stoplight, just go straight.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it's
Straight,
before
you'll
you
see
take
it.
the right into the parking lot, you just go just a little bit past.
end? Oh, okay. Okay, good.
Right there.
Good. Let's see. We did
And
that
Kyra,
one,
you were noticing some stuff on social media.
Yeah, I've Facebook. I've do that, and a lot of people are a little bit addicted to that, and I've done that for a while. So I keep seeing these videos come up lately that are promoting incineration of trash as the solution, and I see this like, look at Europe, look at Norway, look at Sweden. They're doing it right. They're not just being able to not landfill anymore, but they're actually importing trash from other places.
Are they generating power with it? Is that
And
what
they
they're
are
doing?
generating power. They're really showing this is like this will save you. This is the answer. And I'm
Unless
wondering,
you like to breathe.
what are the downsides to this?
There are some very significant downsides, and because this issue has come up over the years, and some people are very attracted to the idea of incineration because you're taking something that people think of as bad, garbage, and you're doing something with it, and you're trying to make something that they feel is good, energy. And unfortunately for many people, that's where they stop thinking. They've bought into the slogan, and there they are. So couple things. One, many people don't know there was an incinerator in Curry County for several years.
Wow.
It's closed. It closed a few years before I arrived here in Delaware County in
Okay,
1994.
so that's the question. Why?
Why?
But why did it close? Exactly. Well, so a couple things. First of all, I want to emphasize the dynamics about how communities get sold on incinerators.
Okay.
And how that happens is you get big engineering companies who build incinerators, swoop into town and tell you, okay, they're going to solve your problems. So you're going to take a bad thing, you're going to make a good thing, and there's going to be so much money. That's BS.
Is it a scam? Really? Seriously?
Well, it is, because essentially local governments have a kind of flow control involved. We can navigate what is going to which location, right? And so when communities build these big incinerators, these big black boxes, unfortunately, that's where all their money has gone now. They've invested in this thing, and now they need to feed the beast because they don't have resources anymore. All of those resources have gone into the engineering firm that built the incinerator, right? And then they have to keep paying to do that. And so when people start talking about, well, why don't we have recycling programs? The reason is you've built the incinerator. You've spent all the money that you had.
Wow.
Furthermore, having built the incinerator, there's some very basic physics things. We live in a wet community, right? And so one of the things Brookings found is that when you're collecting wet trash, right? You're starting with wet trash. That
Too much trash
so
juice.
good, right? And so they actually needed to use a lot of the energy they were producing to dry out the trash so they could get it to burn.
Oh, wow.
Then when you burn it, there's fly ash, there's bottom ash. And the garbage doesn't go away. In terms of weight, you've got about 30% of the weight that you started with. And it's hazardous now.
Yeah.
It's not the same kind of stuff that you started with. You can't just put it in a landfill. And then furthermore, you have things like mercury devices, thermostats, thermometers, little blinking shoes, mercury batteries. Unless you have a very aggressive program at the front end to pull those things out, while you have various pollution controls, electrostatic precipitators, et cetera, to try to control those pollutants, well, mercury, as anybody who's played with the little thing in their hand, they know the mercury is a liquid at room temperature, and it doesn't take a lot of heat to turn that into a gas. Well, you're not going to be able to control the mercury coming out of an incinerator.
Wow.
And so this is a problem. And it's a problem in places like Norway and Sweden that have a lot of these incinerators, and that goes up the flue. And then you have mercury concentrations in the fish, and they try to wipe their hands of it, but that's where the mercury's coming from, is from those incinerators.
Wow.
So the quick and dirty reasons why incineration is not a very good idea for this community is, one, we're small. In order to build something, you would need to be importing garbage from other areas.
Wow.
Two, we're wet. In order to get the things to burn correctly, you'd need to heat them up and dry them up. Where's that energy coming from? Three, you're being sold a bill of goods by a company that's going to make their money whether or not the incinerator works. And four, if you're concerned about pollution controls need to start at the front end before you do any processing at the back end. And so I would not advise putting all of your money into a back end solution. Our approach needs to be more at the front end. That's why recycling is so important.
And that's where things have changed as far as recycling and trash disposal, too. I mean, I think with the incinerating and the incinerator, people are hearkening back, and there aren't a lot of folks who remember, like back before World War II and before the birth of the modern landfill in the U.S., when folks had incinerators in their backyard. I as a kid, I lived out in the country, and we'd burn our trash back then. But that was when your trash was mostly paper.
And burning paper and wood is not a problem. Burning the plastics is. They tend to be real... well, one of the things that happens is when you're burning in your household, say a lot of people put a milk carton in, right?
And that's
there's plastic in there. And unfortunately, at low temperatures, when plastics are burned at low temperatures, they produce dioxins, which are some of the most toxic chemicals known. And so you're exposing your family and all your neighbors to those dioxins whenever you burn plastics. So please, don't burn plastics.
Do you hang around in this neighborhood after dark at all?
I have.
I've noticed that it's kind of a thing in the neighborhood to burn your trash after dark, where people can't see the smoke. But I'll come outside and it just smells like burning plastic, and I'm like, thanks, neighbors. How can you think? I mean, burning plastic is a horrible thing.
It's really not good, and unfortunately, some people, when they're ignorant, they pretend everything's fine.
It's that wishful thinking again.
Exactly.
So, shall we move on to the next one?
let's move on to this.
I'm interested in this. Okay. Many of us own and wear fleece clothing items. I've never thought about this. I recently found out the fibers are marine pollutant. Wow. Is there a responsible way to care for these items? And what is the marine pollutant? Do they just break down like plastic in the ocean?
So
which means
we're talking about plastic fleece, right?
Okay.
I'm wearing a wool fleece sweater, for example. Wool.
Yeah, I was going to call
is
you
an
out,
organic
but...
fiber.
Nice.
It's not a problem. Right? Because
they
little bits they break down.
Too,
really,
right.
Really.
But the plastic fleeces, and Patagonia makes some good ones, and they're nice and snuggy. I own a few.
Cozy.
Yeah, right. So they're there are some good things about them. But when you wash those sort of plastic fleece items, they do release little plastic fibers, and that's part of the burden of the plastics in the ocean. And that is a big, enormous problem. There are 7 oceans on the planet, and there are 7 gyres of plastic. And those plastic islands, I don't want to give the idea that there's really an island of plastic in the middle.
It's an agglomeration
that was
of junk.
something that they thought about in the 90s, that it was like,
and they
all
say,
the media came out, it was like
it's
people
as big as
could
Texas.
walk
I remember.
across
Well, it's
it
bigger.
and stuff.
It's bigger than
Now it's-
Africa.
Yeah.
It's
in total?
big.
In
It's-
total,
it's
yeah.
just that's just the Pacific gyre.
Are you kidding
The
me?
North
Really?
I am
Pacific
not-
Gyre
Okay, so
is
last I
bigger.
heard, big as Texas, and then twice as big as Texas, and there were 2 of them.
When I was
There's
going through the
7 now.
gyre, it was as big
There's
as
7 of
Texas,
them,
and
and-
now it's grown.
Wow.
Well, Kyra, tell us a little bit of you before
Well,
you joined this agency.
Right, before I got this fancy land job, I was a merchant marine. And
Oh, wow.
I worked on research vessels. We did bathymetric surveys, which is mapping the seafloor. And I went back and forth to Hawaii a few times and went through the gyre every time.
Wow.
And every time we went through, we would get stuck. Our props would get fouled.
Oh, wow.
We would have to go out into this like plastic soup and cut free our vessel.
Can you believe there are people who actually say that these are conspiracy theories, that the media's made up the gyres, that they don't actually exist?
I can believe it.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, right?
I can believe
But
anything.
from your personal
But from my
Yeah.
personal experience, it's out there.
It's there.
The truth
Wow.
is out there. It exists. It's not easy to see from a plane because it's slightly submerged, and it's like a soup.
Yeah.
And it's made up of, well, there's very large pieces. The larger pieces, though, do sort of submerge. Like there's huge plastic fishing nets. There's all kind, and that actually they sort of gather other things together. Unfortunately, they gather marine life. The plastic bags that are attracted to them look like jellyfish. Animals eat these things. So not only is this huge gyre, sort of slow-moving plastic soup, but it also has a rotting sea life in it, trapped in it. So you don't want to open your mouth when you're trying to cut your props free.
Oh my gosh!
Out of there.
Oh wow! Have you seen the penguins? I just saw this a couple of days ago on Facebook. Penguins living on a floating island of plastic.
Wow, that sucks.
Yeah, and they're just adapting and living. And that's great. So that's what we get to do adapt to our trash.
Well,
and I guess the photo part of the physics of what happens to the plastic, it just keeps breaking down into smaller
That's true.
pieces.
And
it doesn't go away. It's just
if you can get it while it's big, get it before it gets there. That's
Yeah.
the best thing you can do.
Yeah.
Like change the ways that we're doing things, minimize our use, change our ideas about. And that's actually one of the most dangerous things I see about incineration, is that if you say, if you just burn it all, but then we'll have nothing to stop us from just using all of our resources.
Yeah,
because we'll be taken care of.
yeah.
But in the ocean, the smaller it gets, getting all these like microbeads, the more difficult and ridiculous it is to try to clean this up.
Sure.
It's
And
extremely hard.
Easier it is for it to get into the food chain.
And
as well,
all of
too,
those
right?
little micro pieces used to be the big chunks.
Yeah.
So we had chances.
Well, and now some of them are coming from our wastewater treatment plants as we're washing our polyester fleeces and things like that.
Oh,
So full
so in terms of if you were to count piece by piece, and they're increasingly there are studies about this. So I'm quoting from an article in Science News now. But about 94%.
That sounds fake.
and yet it's not. So 94% of the pieces of plastic are these microplastics, these little plastic fibers or these little plastic bits. And so, but you do end up with the bigger pieces. So about 25% of the pieces are the bigger pieces, like the pieces of net. And they make up about 53% of the mass. But what they found is, looking at the mass, is their recent studies indicate that the Pacific garbage patch is about 16 times more massive than they originally thought.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Right. So you can just
because
imagine
of the microfibers that aren't so easily that they can't see.
Part of that, yes, just doing a better accounting of the various masses that are out there. But there is a lot of plastic. A lot of it is fishing gear, but a lot of it is also coming from the way that we use plastics, and it's washing off our mainland.
What do you do with your fleece then if it's a plastic flease? Are you actually
a
advocating?
very interesting question. A lot of us are on septic tanks. And it's less of an issue for a septic tank.
Yeah, because
it's still an issue, but it's less of an issue. For the wastewater treatment plant, they're challenged because you have these little microplastics, and they're going through there, and they're not set up to recover them, and so they largely will be passed out through the ocean. And so, if you're on the city sewer system, that's what's happening. So you might want to hand wash those if you were really concerned about trying to keep those plastics out of the wastewater treatment plant.
Does that really make that much of a difference, machine as opposed to hand washing? You're still
by hand washing them,
just gently.
You can gently it's a little bit more gentle, and that begs the question of where that water goes, because that water will have the microplastics in it.
But
all right, so
another thing is just to be aware, what it is, where it's going, and maybe think about bamboo or wool or different products. So.
But plastic, and this is something we need to do at some point. One of these shows needs to be like a science fiction show, and then we can talk about steps we would need to take, things that would happen, possible consequences of getting plastic out of our lives.
Yes,
and there are people who are actually trying to do that
everywhere.
And it's ubiquitous, but I want to take a moment to talk about how plastics became part of our culture, right? I think part of the appeal for programs like Game of Thrones and things like that is you're absorbing yourself in this culture that was before plastics, where craftsmanship made some difference. But us, you may remember us older folks remember the film The Graduate with Dustin Hoffman, and
that was the future.
The gentleman who took him out to the side, and I have one word for you, young man. One word: plastics. Because at that time in the early '60s, that was the future from that framework, because the petroleum economy had taken off. Everybody had cars, and literally the petroleum industry was faced with the choice of, we can either take these byproducts, because we all just want to sell gas and propane and butane and octane, the fuels, but you've got all this other stuff that's in crude oil, right? And so when you separate all those other things, you can manage them as hazardous waste, or you can make them into some kind of product. And so by combining
the albums,
natural gas with different kinds of materials that are separated from crude oil, you can make a variety of different kinds of plastics that have a variety of uses. And I'm not saying that plastic has no use. I'm just saying there was never a time in which we asked ourselves, is this the right way to use plastics? Is this an appropriate way to use these petrochemical byproducts?
I don't even think we're asking really as a society those questions now.
And that's why I'm raising this issue, because we really we're not thinking about plastics as part of our petroleum economy. And that is absolutely what they are. And we have all of these giveaway plastic toothbrushes, razors, all the the safety wrapping around the pill bottles. There will never be a day, unfortunately, when there won't be a time that someone's trying to push a new plastic thing into your hand and convince you that it's going to be useful for long enough that you're willing to take it.
Well, or long enough to justify the fact that long after you're dead, this item in some fashion is still going to be existent on the planet. Wow. Okay. All right, where are we?
Okay, so
wow, this is a good question. Do it. Yeah, I want to know this.
This one?
Yeah, 7.
Number 7. So, is bubble wrap recyclable? It says it right on the plastic, and I want to know.
A lot of things do. If you look on plastic items, so the rule in our county is you can recycle plastic jugs, bottles, tubs, and jars. Those things are recyclable. If it's not one of those things,
wow, really? Okay.
You have to find the number on it. So you look around on the package and you try to find the 3 chasing arrows, and a little triangle with a number in the center. And the recyclable items here are 1, 2, 4, 5, and 7. So if it has a number 3 or a number 6 and it's not a jug, jar, or bottle,
so it can have that number and be one of those items and be recyclable.
If it is a jug, jar, or bottle, The number doesn't matter.
Gotcha.
It's okay.
Okay, cool. Good.
So I had this
that.
very question with my wife. She was frustrated because she said, "Oh, here's this wonderful hummus, and it's made organic. And they say please recycle. I'm looking all over this thing, and I don't see a
Where's
number."
the number?
And I said, "It's a tub. Therefore, it's recyclable."
All right.
That's great. Finally.
So
All this training
is
pays
bubble
off.
wrap recyclable? So one of the problems with recycling in general is there's always this relationship between how much it costs to separate and process the materials, how far it is to transport it to a market, how much it costs to get there, and what's the value of the market once it gets there. And so bubble wrap is a kind of film plastic. Film plastics are not recyclable in our county anymore.
In our county.
And I believe pretty much nowhere statewide.
Okay.
They used to be. We used to have recycle both styrofoam and film plastics and bubble wrap, but this was part of the crash of the recycling markets. This is part of the contamination that China doesn't want anymore. As far as I know, there isn't a market of any kind for film plastic.
It's just because the quality of the recycled material is just not good enough, or
And it's a contamination for most of the processors. There's a special kind of separation technology called a star screen separator, and essentially it looks like little throwing stars on a cylinder. And that's good for separating a variety of materials, but not plastic bags.
Oh,
Plastic
they
bags,
would foul them all up.
and then
Right.
you don't have a useful thing.
and so
That makes sense.
the issues with plastic bags, that's related to the bubble wrap because it's a plastic film.
It's a film, what we call a film plastic.
Okay.
Like saran wrap, like a plastic bag. It's just that it's the sheet of plastic combined to make something.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. All right, I'll do this one.
All right.
I like because it's all personal. My friend told me they're recycling styrofoam and cartons in the Bay Area. Why can't we just send those items to areas? Well, I know the answer to this one.
Okay, well, so we used to recycle both those materials, styrofoams and cartons, and it like I said, it's the cost to separate and process and keep it clean and the value of the markets.
Well, and the funny thing is too, you might be super light with all of this stuff, but you're going to take up a bunch of space, and you're still going to have to truck it, and you're still going to have to buy gas and all of that stuff.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So you're shipping a lot of volume with very little weight. The other thing is styrofoam tends to be pretty contaminated. Oftentimes it's used in food service things or styrofoam trays, those sorts of things. So it tends to be really contaminated. Cartons are a particularly interesting item in that the Carton Recycling Council has been trying to promote carton recycling for some time. But in our area, we don't have enough people so that we gather enough cartons quickly enough.
What kind of cartons are you referring to?
I'm talking about milk cartons, juice cartons, the gable top kind of things. Right?
Gotcha.
But it takes a while to accumulate enough material to get a bale of cartons. And then you have to get that to someone who can use the bale quickly. It has literally a bale of cartons has a sell-by date.
Really?
Because if you don't sell it quickly enough, then the milk has gone rancid, the juice has gone rancid, the material has degraded. They don't want it anymore.
Wow.
It's trash. And so Jordan Kekry, while he did all of the good things he did with Julinder Recycling, really tried to make carton recycling work. And he just couldn't accumulate enough cartons quickly enough. And by the time he had a truckload or enough to ship, it was already rancid. So that's not marketable. So those are two materials that we just can't afford to recycle anymore, and we would like to.
Yeah.
But again, you can't just do it at any price, right? And again, also these things are part of our whole recycling system. The whole recycling system has to work all the time. We want it to be robust. We can't have something where the markets are going down so much that a thing that was once recyclable now has to be picked out as trash.
Yeah. It's so interesting to think that there's so many things to factor into recycling, and I'm glad you guys do this for us, so I don't have to remember supply and demand economics. I don't have to remember the price of gas. All of these. Oh,
well,
wow.
There's a curious thing. Actually, we were talking about shipping. So, how do all of our materials end up in China? And that has to do with the low cost of shipping overseas.
That's true.
It just doesn't take a lot of fuel to move shipping containers. And so the factoid that I thought was really fascinating was that it takes less fuel to transport materials from China to the east coast of the United States than the amount of fuel it takes to go from Boston to Vermont. To ship those same materials from Boston to Vermont, from once they get to the East Coast, takes more fuel than all of the fuel it took to go from China to Boston.
What? Okay. All right. Well, yeah, you've got
Yeah,
you get a super a
so
super
that's
container.
how we end up in a global
That's
economy.
why we can't have nice things.
And that's also why it's really stupid to have trade wars. But wow, really from Boston to Vermont, so across...
shipping overseas, if it's done right, it really is extraordinarily inexpensive and fuel efficient.
Wow. So I'm just getting my head... Okay, so it comes off the boat. They divide it all up. They put it on trucks. They drive across Massachusetts and Connecticut. Yeah. And that costs more and uses more fuel than coming all the way around the world.
Yep.
In a container ship.
Yep.
That's interesting. Okay, all right. My mind is blown. This is the one fact I will talk about for the rest of the day. Thank you, Ted.
That's true.
So I actually jumped the gun on this one already, but why aren't recyclable items as valuable as they used to be?
It has to do with the cost to separate the materials that really no longer have a market. That's pretty much it. And increasingly, again, we're not doing much control on the front end.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're not asking ourselves, is this a good use of plastic? And you're seeing more and more
at the manufacture of an item, right? Even before, is this a good piece of plastic? What do I do with it? As a consumer dealing with that, we have to go step back even farther as a manufacturer and go, is this a stupid use of plastic?
And same thing on packaging. Yep. For instance, in Europe, they have something called the Green Dot program. And essentially the manufacturers in charge of packaging have to get a green dot on their package to make sure that it goes into the recycling system and everything works. We don't have that system. Wow. And so consequently, you have increasing varieties of composite packaging that are less and less recyclable because we don't have that control at all.
Wow. Okay.
So that's part of the reason there's more trash in it. And they're, like I said, the international markets are becoming less and less accepting of having contaminated recyclables.
Wow. Okay, I don't understand this question. So why can't I put all paper products together and keep them dry and separate from the other recycling?
It's a good question. Because, people tend to lump things, and I understand that. For instance, cardboard, right? That term, right?
Oh yeah,
So
we
cardboard
went through the definition
means both corrugated cardboard, the kind that brown has the wavy layer in between, right? And then you've got boxboard, like cereal boxes. People also call that cardboard, right? They call that cardboard. But for example, Recology right now really wants people not to put the boxboard in with the cardboard.
It feels so wrong throwing that away.
Well, and it's not to be thrown away. The boxboard is still recyclable, just it does not belong in the cardboard bin. Okay. So it can still go in your recycling. Okay. But for instance, papers, right? Those are two kinds of things. The same word is used. Yeah. And sometimes people think, well, all paper is paper. Can I just do it in the paper bag?
Even in the newspaper, you've got different kinds of paper, right?
And the value of those papers is based on the length and the strength of the fibers. Okay. And so the corrugated cardboard and craft paper bags, the brown paper bags, both have those long, strong fibers. Those are the most valuable paper commodities. Okay. The second most valuable is office paper, clean office paper. And so that's the reason why we're being asked to separate out our papers, because that has value. And if you mix in those white office papers, say with all of your newspaper, not so much value. Okay. Right? So because we're trying to make recycling work, part of that is keeping the valuable recyclables valuable. So they ask to keep, and then the other reason is you're asked to keep your paper shreds bagged and separate, and your opened junk mail bagged and separated. So you've got the white office paper in one bag, you've got the open junk mail in another, and the paper shreds in another. Each of those separately bagged can go into our recycling system. Okay. Why do we keep them separate? Well, for the shreds, if they're unbagged, that's just a problem. You've got the paper shreds all over your recycling. Who is that helping, really? And I assure you, there is no easy way to separate all those paper shreds from all of the other recyclable materials. Seriously, unbagged paper shreds are not helping.
Yeah, okay.
Open junk mail. I think we talked about this last time, but the reason why you have to open the junk mail is that those go into like a big blender. And if you don't open the junk mail, what that blender will do is it'll just take chunks out of the envelope, but the little papers in there won't come out of the envelope, which is really important for that hopper to blend all the materials.
Any concern with glossy paper?
The glossy paper can be recycled with magazines. That can go in loose with the newspapers, magazines. And telephone books all can go in loose.
Wow, okay. All right. I had no idea. I had no idea that I mean, just as what you talked about with plastics and the kind of care and concern that we need to put into the different kinds of plastics and the different iterations and how they're manufactured. Same thing for paper. Wow, okay. All right, Kyra, take the last one.
Well, I want to use this brief moment to celebrate some important community groups that are getting recognized at our next authority meeting. So, the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority will be meeting this Thursday, April 19th, at the Board of Supervisors office at Chambers at 3:30. But this year, we give Green Ribbon Awards. Each year, we try to give. This is the only environmental award given by any local government agency in Del Norte County. Wow. And we like to celebrate folks who are doing good things. And so this year, we're celebrating all of the crews who have done cleanups because they're so important, and so many volunteers have devoted their time and efforts to address those issues, and we really appreciate it. So we're giving Outstanding Cleanup Effort Awards to the Yurok Tribal Council for the annual Klamath River Cleanup, which is just a great event. If you haven't done it before, I certainly recommend it. The Interfaith Council has done a lot of cleanups. Surfrider Del Norte has done cleanups, as well as there was a huge cleanup at Pacific Shores this year, paid for actually by the remaining taxes collected for the Pacific Shores Water District, but good use of those funds.
That's great.
Take Out Bite Out of Blight, a group that's been around for several years, has been doing cleanups. Smith River Alliance, there's a lot of great cleanups up on the Smith River watershed. Hambro WSG, we're also recognizing for opening up that new buyback at the fairgrounds that we were just talking about. And we're also giving a shout out to West Park Properties, because Richard Knutson has really helped his tenants do recycling in a multifamily environment. Sometimes that's a little challenging.
Where's the property? Do you know?
I think that's up by us. A little bit.
Short answer is I'm not exactly
sure. We're not exactly
that's
sure, but
interesting.
Northcrest, I think.
Okay.
Not
but
sure.
that's really good. So it's a property owner who's really trying to help his tenants
Absolutely.
get
exactly. And multifamily recycling can be challenging because, of course, most of the communications between us or the Recology and the property owner goes to the person who's paying the bills.
Yeah.
But of course, the tenants aren't necessarily separately paying the bills, but they need the recycling information just as much. So it's really important to do that outreach.
He's been very good. He's called us and Recology many times about how to do it right.
Fantastic.
And he's passing that on. He's also, thinking about some of his tenants are a little bit older, thinking about larger print, things like this. He's great.
Wow, that's great to see somebody like being proactive in that way. And this is happening at the meeting, the Solid Waste Management Board meeting, which is what, 3:30?
Thursday, April 19th.
Okay, great. That's at 981 Flynn in the Board of Supervisors chambers.
Perfect.
Okay.
So thanks so much for taking this time. We'll be back next month, and next month we plan on talking a little bit more about composting and organic waste.
Cool.
Yard debris.
Yay.
Because spring is coming and people are working in their yards.
How big's the pile?
Pretty big.
There's a pile at the transfer
We're open
station.
this weekend.
I want to come by and see it. And last time I was out there, they had the 2-story backhoe or forklift or whatever it is. The backhoe, I guess it was, out there dealing with that thing. I love seeing how high that gets piled. That's a lot of fun.
We love seeing it shrink. We love seeing it do its thing.
Compost happens.
Yes, it does.
I look forward to that. And thank you guys, Kyra and Ted. I'm really happy with the expanded format of this. This has been a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to the jingle.
Okay, we'll be talking to you next month about this time.
Next month, okay. And let's do this before we get any farther. I want to make sure we are on the same page. So we're talking May 11th.
May 11th, second Friday of the month.
All right, 11 o'clock in the morning, May 11th, right here. We will revisit these issues, and I'm sure by then you guys will have everything worked out, and it'll be...
We will keep trying.
Ted, Kyra, thank you so very much.